Hey, I'd like to open the meeting by making a land acknowledgement. I'd like to start this meeting by recognizing that the area we call the Fraser Valley Regional District has been home to the Lakatma, Shatatliam, Stalo, and Stahelas people for generations. There are 31 communities with reserve lands in the FVRD's jurisdiction and as many as 69 groups with interests in the area. This diverse landscape means that there are many different viewpoints that need to be considered when we make decisions. Because what we decide as a local government can affect everyone in different ways now and in the future. So as part of our collective responsibility, I commit that we continually examine the work we do to ensure that our projects, plans, initiatives, and discussion are guided by the principles of inclusion, collaboration, and reconciliation today and in the future. So with that in mind, I'd like to call to order the September 12th, 2024 meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee. Ms. Kinham.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. So the first item on our agenda is your report from this morning's Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting.
Used very thin agenda this morning. That there was a discussion regarding the $10,000 contribution towards radon test kits, which the staff emphasizing the importance of the FERD program relative to the library kit borrowing program. Evidently, areas B and H seem to have some reason for concern as past testing for radon is indicated. The FBRD has put forward a resolution to UBCM seeking the province establish a program to help residents with the cost of installing radon mitigation systems. And that was really the only thing we discussed at length in the morning meeting. Everything's back to Ms. Kinman.
Thank you. So looking for approval of the agenda, and late items.
Move Director Johnson, second Director Wardenberg. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor. Contrary, motion carries.
Item 5.1 is Cedar Acres Trailer Park at 35584 Daru Road in Electoral Area F, and we have a delegation by Stephen Coster.
Welcome, Mr. Coster.
Good afternoon. I am Stephen Coster and represent the family-run Cedar Acres Trailer Park in Electoral Area F on Duria Road, Patsick Valley. I wish to extend my appreciation to the committee for the opportunity to present my query before you today. Firstly, I'd like to thank the district's assistance from Mr. Nadvi, Ms. Heron, and Director Davidson for their recent efforts. Their involvement has been invaluable. I'm here to ask the board to alter the district policy regarding the replacement of mobile homes within Cedar Acres Trailer Park, a legally non-conforming mobile home park. I have a little bit of background. We definitely recognize the regional district's role in land use management, and in that vein, we approached the district just short of 45 years ago when Cedar Acres was listed for sale. We unequivocally asked if the district had any barrier to Cedar Acres continuing to operate as is as a mobile home park, even if under new ownership. And the planner expressed the district's interest in the park remaining operating and provided zoning bylaw number 202/1980 as written proof of the district's intentions. I believe you all received a copy of that bylaw with my pre-submission letter, but the relevant section for today is the replacement of a mobile home by any mobile home that is removed, demolished, or accidentally destroyed shall be permitted, and it established a maximum of 20 mobile homes for Cedar Acres. With that assurance, we negotiated a price with the vendor appropriate to what the functioning business would reflect and began operating our bucolic little community. The district introduced bylaw number 559/1992, where the aforementioned explicit wording had been dropped. Understandably, we immediately consulted the district again and got the explicit assurances that operationally nothing had changed. The district's intentions remain the same, only the terms would now be provided implicitly by the Local Government Act instead of explicitly by a district bylaw. Given this was a no change, our only documentation netted was the planner's business card and a copy of the bylaw. In 2003, the home on Cedar Acres site number 1 was replaced, and except for the unexpected district direction to use a Board of Variance hearing, the district indeed proved the assurances of all the district representatives to date, and the home replacement was permitted. In the course of our ownership, multiple homes within the park were of course bought and sold, and indeed some potential purchasers seeing other parks closing down asked what the longer-term prospects of Cedar Acres operating as a mobile home park were, basically confirming that their investment would be sound. Consistent with the advice that we've been receiving, we in turn cited the district's 1980 terms and our own longer-term intentions, which by the decades that have passed were all evidently being proven true. Things changed for Cedar Acres in 2016, when a potential resident wished to bring a new home for site number 15. Cedar Acres cited the Board of Variance requirement that we experienced in 2003 and directed the individual to approach the district. With some surprise, we found the district had introduced a new requirement of rezoning. And over the next 4 years, we had mixed responses from the district, seemingly dependent on who was doing the asking and who was being asked. But certainly by 2020, every representative of the district was unequivocal in the demand for rezoning. Frequent citation of the 2010 Strojan v. Parksville decision was provided as having clarified, if not dictated, what local government act non-conforming permitted for mobile home parks. The district interpretation was entirely contrary to their stated intentions previously. As a sense of the scale of the swing, I noted the most restrictive of the publicly published legal opinion of Stewart McDonald Stewart, which is a law firm devoted to providing legal services to local governments in BC. A copy, or at least the URL, was provided by pre-submission letter to the committee. You'll have noticed there that the firm also lists 2 other options and an explicit proviso at the end, all of which would allow for legal home replacement with some conditions. As further evidence, one can find other local governments facilitating legally non-conforming park home replacements, and these include the Regional District of Kitimat-Stikine. As I prepared this presentation, I recalled that the final pre-cost clause of the Justice Wong conclusion in that Strojan case commended the City of Parksville policy for home replacement and encouraged those 2 parties to work together towards a reasonable solution. So I contacted the City of Parksville Director of Community Planning and Building and found that to this day, the City of Parksville still permits replacement of same-size mobile homes for their city's legally non-conforming parks, even to the Parksville Mobile Home Park, which was a subject property in that Strojan decision. Back to our regional district, in recent discussions, of course, the considerations of water, sewer, geohazard, and setbacks were expressed as being of district understandable interest. And we'd like to note that water and sewer are already being regulated by provincial law, namely under the jurisdiction of Fraser Health. And even if when zoned, would still be provincially regulated. As a small water system, we are already tested 4 times a month, with multiple audits a year. As to geohazard, we've seen the valley flood events, having been there since 1980, and discussed the same with the residents regarding the time before us. And the Duriel Bench has a fortuitous topographical location. Even during our most recent unfortunate atmospheric river event, the evacuation alert that was raised for the area was not because of the safety of the Cedar Acres homes, but rather because the district could not guarantee the provincial road access. As for setbacks, all the homes are well set back from Cedar Acres property line. As a matter of fact, a professional survey found that one of Cedar Acres' neighbors has buildings that are actually on Cedar Acres property. As to being a good community citizen, even district staff described us as being a nice one, that they were unaware of any neighbor raising any complaint that the Cedar Acres is even part of the district's affordable housing strategy. Unlike the public relation impacts of the dangerous dog attacks, the gravel removal operations, the pig farms, we've got fentanyl factories up the valley, illegal cannabis grow ops, the construction soil dump sites, and whatever that odor was up Stave Lake, the dump site. Cedar Acres, on the other hand, is contributing none of that. And last, but certainly by no means insignificant, the impact of the cost. The district staff is still collecting an estimate as to what our little community's expense will be to go through the whole rezone, but I'm certain it will push many of the current homeowners into their own personal housing crisis. The value for that cost, neither I nor staff were able to articulate anything that the homeowners will likely appreciate the cost benefit. And with the rest area housing issues already being experienced in the Fraser Valley and the approaching closure of the nearby Mission Grove mobile home park, I think all of us here see the value in not waiting for the residents to put this to the press's public judgment of each of our contributions to this situation. So given the history, the current state, other jurisdictions' precedents, and the expected costs, I'm asking the board to enact a policy change to enable the staff to permit us to continue to operate as decades of district assurances were stated, much like the City of Parksville does to this day. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Coster.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any questions from directors? Director Davidson.
I don't have any questions. Pleasure to hear you speak. We've exchanged lots of emails in the past, and thank you for coming and speaking so well. I don't have questions. I do have comments on where I've been, where I am on this whole topic. What started this is Mr. Costa reached out to me asking me if I would be willing to champion such a policy that would allow replacement of mobile home parks. He sent me the links for the legal opinion on the Strochan decision in 2010, which turns out to be landmark case law and all that. And also made me aware of the regional district of Sakine, Sakine's policy. They've introduced a policy which allows a one-time replacement of mobile homes, but with some caveats. In the case of regional Sakine, the caveats are that they basically have to sign a waiver holding the regional district harmless should anything go sideways, and they won't get a building permit. The regional district won't be issuing a building permit for that home. On the legal opinion the link is in that email that went out. What struck me in it was that the legal opinion on the Strochan decision is basically saying yes, a regional district can allow it, but there's also there's some risk should a resident say object to it simply because it goes against the case law in Strochan about the expectation around what legal nonconformance legislation is around. The expectation being is that eventually that a property that's legally non-conforming of any kind is brought into conformance somewhere along the line. So some of these policies struck me as being really just deferring the matter to a future generation. And that didn't sit well with me. And then also you have to consider too that when you go to the effort of an official community plan and zoning bylaws, laying out your vision for the community. And if mobile home parks are part of that vision, great. If they're not, that's why we have this legal non-conformance status. So for myself, I struggled with the idea of championing this, but bearing in mind that we have legal non-conforming mobile home parks throughout the regional district, I did suggest to Mr. Coster that he come as a delegation and talk about what's going on, because I'm just one member here. You guys could have different opinions on it, and that's basically the context for how we came to be here today.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Any other discussion? Mr. Coster, how long is your company owned the park?
It's personally owned since 1980.
So 45 years. Yeah. And these trailers, are they all nearing end of life, or?
A lot of them are maintained, and of course there's two that are new. The one on site 1, and there's a new one on site 15. But other than that, they're all older. I could submit pictures or.
Staff, do you have anything to add to this, or?
Thank you, Chair. At the heart of the issue is provisions in the Local Government Act that are intended to protect developments from change in zoning, but it's a rather limited protection that the Act provides. It protects the use it protects owners from situations where local governments, where there's a legally established land use and then a local government comes along after the fact and establishes a zoning bylaw that doesn't allow that land use. And the intention of the Act is to allow that land use to continue, but to put limitations on it. And so the Act allows the land use to continue only for essentially the natural life of the structures that house it. And it does that by prohibiting replacement of those structures and prohibiting structural alterations, except with certain approvals. And the idea is that when the life of the structure reaches its natural end, it's replaced with a land use that conforms to the zoning bylaw. What adds complexity in this case is that this provision in the Local Government Act is, how we understand it, is significantly shaped by case law over the years. And so Mr. Coster referenced this decision that came in 2010 that came out of a conflict between Parksville and a mobile home park owner there, Mr. Stroshin. And in that case, the court ruled that the replacement of mobile homes are a structure, and if a mobile home leaves the property or is damaged or destroyed, then local governments are unable to authorize its replacement. In some instances, we see like the referenced example in Kitimat-Stikine. Kitimat-Stikine is not using a policy to allow a land use that their zoning bylaw doesn't allow, because there's no approach to enabling land uses by policy where those land uses are prohibited through zoning bylaws. We're unable to do that legally. What local governments can do is adopt a policy not to enforce their bylaw, but that wouldn't allow the issuance of a building permit. And so in that instance, the board would be tasked accepting the placement of a mobile home without a building permit, contrary to the building bylaw. So there's some inherent risks with that kind of approach. But I want it to be clear that the kind of policy approaches that the court refers to or we see elsewhere is not to allow a land use through policy, but rather to, by policy, not enforce that element of the zoning bylaw. And there's a meaningful distinction to be made there.
Could you repeat that, please, Graham?
Yes. Yeah. The heart of the issue here really is the provincial law and the case law surrounding the provincial law, not regional district FDRD policy. The opportunities that Mr. Coster references with the use of a policy and non-conforming mobile home parks is that the regional district could adopt a policy to refrain from enforcing its zoning bylaw in relation to the placement of new mobile homes in that mobile home park. But we can't authorize a land use by policy where that land use isn't allowed in a zoning bylaw. So we can't alter a zoning bylaw simply through policy, not legal. And of course, that kind of policy approach of not enforcing a zoning bylaw would result in mobile homes, people's homes being placed without building permits. And so there are implications there as well. But that's something that the board could consider if that's its wish in this case. The staff message with Mr. Coster has been consistent since 2016, and that's that we certainly agree with Mr. Coster of the role the mobile home park plays in affordable housing, and it's an important element in our electoral area communities on the north side of the Fraser. And we are in support of it continuing. Where we disagree is the mechanism for allowing that continuation. And the staff has been advocating for the owners to make an application to rezone property to allow mobile home park space. And that's something that staff would be amenable to. Of course, there'd be costs and it would involve review of servicing, but that may be appropriate with a use that's been established since, before 1980. Certainly there are costs involved in uncertainties, and I would appreciate why the owners maybe wouldn't welcome that as an option. I understand the costs and the uncertainty there. If the board's interested in exploring this matter further, perhaps you would direct us to bring forward a report for information to a future board meeting that could give you additional background and explore options in a little bit more detail, perhaps more detail than we're able to provide at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daniluz. Director Davidson.
Just a question for Mr. Daniluz and a couple of other comments. I forgot list, but are there any existing conforming mobile home parks in the electoral area districts? Or are they all legally non-conforming?
There are conforming mobile home parks in the regional district. The circumstances, they originate from decisions made by the former Dudney-Alouette Regional District as early as 1972, when the very first zoning bylaw was adopted in the area. And the regional district, DARD at that time, elected to apply zoning to this property, but also to a number of other properties on Hatzick Island where we had more dense development occurring. And the choice by Dudney-Alouette at that time was to apply zoning that didn't support the continuation of those land uses. And that decision then was reinforced as those bylaws were renewed in the 80s and in the 90s and still reflected in our current bylaw. So it's hard to, of course, speak to the intention of Dudney-Alouette at the time, But I do think that the implications of the zoning that they chose were understood by the board.
So I think the OCP land designation for that for Cedar Park is rural. Would an OCP amendment be required as well?
I don't believe so. The OCP contains policies that say notwithstanding the land designations where we have a lawfully non-conforming land use, the board could elect to apply zoning to legitimize the current land use.
Okay, so just my comments on, thank you for that. My additional comments on this was that, you know, when I start hearing things like can't issue a building permit, the things that come into my mind are like, well, what about insurance? Can you even insure something like that? It's not our problem to solve. But I was curious. I did call up my own home insurance and said, well, what if this and what if that? And the response was non-committal. It would depend on the underwriters to evaluate it, because not every structure in the province is within an area where building permits are issued. Yet something remote, you know, outside of a planning area can still be insured, but it's really up to the call of an underwriter to make that thing. So that was interesting. I also reached out to Parksville, and what surprised me was that as you mentioned, they're continuing to allow replacements of mobile home, and it just struck me that here we have different organizations looking at the same. Oh, and I also asked the question, is there anything specific in your zoning bylaw which speaks to replacement of mobile homes? And the answer was no. So we've got different agencies taking different interpretations of the same case law and the same provincial legislation. So it's got me scratching my head on that one. I'm not sure what the answer is. And the other thing I would add too is that should you go forward with a zoning amendment, there's no guarantee that it would pass. I'm going to be, in terms of my own support for it, I will be influenced by community support for sure. And if for whatever reason, yeah, just like any discretionary permit, like a zoning amendment, there's no guarantee that it would succeed. So just something to be aware of. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Director Davidson. Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair Dickey, through you to staff. I'm wondering how many other requests the regional district has received similar to the requests that we are receiving today. And if we were to grant this request and go down that road, what sort of precedent would such a policy create for us going forward with the other non-conforming?
If I may, through the chair. A proper response to that question, I think, would involve some preparation and research on our end to give you a meaningful response. What I might say for now is that there are a number of lawfully non-conforming developments on Hatzic Island and elsewhere that I think that those developments may look to a board decision in this instance and expect similar treatments. So I think a broader perspective on the matter is relevant, and perhaps if you direct us to come back to you in a subsequent meeting with background and options and analysis, that we could address this question more fully then.
If I could, I'll reframe the question. Have we received other requests?
Yes, thank you. I missed that element. Yeah. Apologies. We've not received this request from other lawfully non-conforming developments in the area, only from Mr. Coster's development.
Thank you.
Good, thank you, Mr. Danilus. I'm wondering if a director would like to make a motion to direct staff in regards to this matter.
Like I say, I'm not sure what that motion would be at this time. I'm not for various reasons, and having read what I've read, and I don't think I'm the champion for this.
Yeah. So Director Dixon, did you have something you'd like to bring forward?
Yes, I have a question right now. So it's my understanding, I guess, through you to staff, that right now, as Cedar Acres is, it's I guess not accept, or it's okay, but once they start changing, then it potentially becomes a liability. Is that concern?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. And so mobile homes that are there, can remain there, and the mobile home park use can continue on the property. But as mobile homes reach the end of their life or are removed, we're prevented from issuing building permits to replace those mobile homes. And so you see then this very slow death of the development over time. And that results from this lawful non-conforming status.
So
Chair Dickey, could I just intervene for a moment? We are starting to veer into asking pretty technical questions of staff on the fly, and I think that Mr. Daniluz has been pretty direct in saying that in order for us to answer these questions, we would need to do a report. So if the committee wishes to continue to explore this matter, I think in fairness to staff, give us the time to do the research and bring forward a fulsome report for your review.
yeah, so perhaps maybe we could see a motion to direct staff to prepare a report on legal non-conforming zoning requirements for trailer park usage. Okay,
I'll move that.
motion Director Davidson, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Director Davidson.
Yeah, just to add, like the fundamental head scratcher I'm left with is you got one case where you've got Kinamat Stakeen, who felt it appropriate to come up with a policy which basically keeps them out of the topic. You know, people who want to replace have to sign a waiver. They don't issue a building permit. Where you've got on the other hand Parksville that says, sure, go ahead, replace, no issue. So sort of deciphering that and unpacking that would be a useful exercise. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. So on the motion, all those in favor? Contrary, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Coster. I'm sure we'll resolve this one way or another.
Thank you.
Ms. Kinham.
Thank you. So moving down to 6.1, we have building bylaw code contraventions at 11185 Farms Road in Electoral Area F.
Motion moved. Director Davidson, second. Director.
Chair Dickey, this is an opportunity for members of the public to be heard. So before we do that, perhaps we could offer that out.
Okay, so are there any members of the public who would like to provide some direction on this issue that's before us regarding the property on Farms Road? If anyone on Zoom or?
This is the item on farm.
Okay, we'll just ask Ms. Olenek to check in online.
If there are any members of the public who wish to speak, I just ask that you would hit the raise hand function. We'll just give them a minute. It appears there are no comments.
It appears not, so we can proceed, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. So we have a motion, a seconder. Any discussion further, Director Davidson?
Yep, supporting the staff recommendation, obviously. Just an interesting, by the way, this is the same property that there was extensive recent illegal fill operations on, as regulated by the ALC in this particular case. It became to light while FERD staff were on site that the structure there had been in clear view from the road for at least a decade, never had a building permit. And it just kind of speaks to what strikes me in the whole thing was that people assume if it's there, it must be okay. And if there's a problem, somebody must know about it. And this thing had just been sitting in plain sight for at least 10 years. It's now derelict, but I'm glad that staff picked up on it while they're on site. Anyway, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. On the motion, all those in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Moving to 7.1, we have the draft Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of July 11th, 2024.
Motion moved Director Dixon, second Director Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
8.1 is a 2024 grant and aid application for DeRoche Elementary School PAC in electoral areas C and G.
So moved.
Moved Director Castle, second Director Wardenberg. Any discussion, Director? No discussion. All those in favor, contrary motion carries.
8.2 is a 2024 grant and aid application for Lake Eric Community Association in electoral area C.
Moved Director Wardenberg, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
8.3 is a 2024 grant and aid request for the Chilliwack River Valley Firefighters Society in electoral area E.
Moved Director McMahon, second Director Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
9.1 is development variance permit 2024-04 to vary setbacks and maneuvering aisle widths at 20962 Sackley Creek Road in electoral area C.
Director Wardenberg moves, second Director Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Up, Director Warden.
Yeah, through the chair to staff. Just to clarify, it's probably in the report, but the snow show, the house design, does that become part of the development permit? Especially the feature of the flat roof.
Yes, the elevation drawings that were submitted that reflect the house design become a schedule to the development permit, and the building would need to be constructed in general conformance with those drawings. The flat roof is relevant because it holds the snow rather than sheds it, and that is germane to the variance that's being sought.
Good, thank you, Director Wardenberg. Further discussion? All those in favor, contrary motion carries.
9.2 is reconsideration of the refusal of development permit 2022-29 for the construction of an addition to a single-family dwelling at 35933 Pattison Road in electoral area F. And I would just draw the committee's attention to the two pieces of correspondence that were circulated previously by email.
Thank you. Director Davidson moves, second Director Castle. Any discussion? Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, on this motion to refuse, appreciate the expert opinion on this. This is a very technical document that I don't have the expertise to appreciate, but the expert opinion sort of reinforces staff's decision to refuse, recommendation to refuse. So on that grounds, I support it. Something that I did want to speak to, and it does relate to the recent correspondence about the province's activities in terms of pulling out stream sedimentation. It needs to be really clear to whoever may be listening who's impacted by this decision that the province's activities are emergency management in response to the 2021 ARE. They are a one-time event. I think some of the things I was reading around this matter suggested that, oh, the province will look after sedimentation or something like that on a regular, ongoing basis. And nothing could be further from the truth, at least as I know it today. So the area of on this that I am familiar with, yeah, there's should be absolutely no reliance on the province to do anything when it comes to these properties. The other question I did have for Mr. Danilus was that, noting that we were into this for a few revisions, I think we're up to about 4 revisions on it, and then followed by a decision to by Mr. Danilus to refuse it. I'm wondering if Mr. Danilus could speak to, why not another revision, 5, 6, as many as it takes. Just wondering if you have any thoughts.
Thank you for the question through the chair. So FERD has developed a comprehensive framework for managing development approvals in hazard areas. And that's because in our electoral areas, the terrain and the environment routinely present hazards, and those hazards present life safety risks and property risks to owners and people who occupy them. And also because when the regional district approves a development, we potentially take on a significant liability risk if something goes wrong with that development, it's impacted by a hazard. And so for those reasons, over a period of some years, FERD's developed a comprehensive approach to managing these hazards. And that approach is set out in policies adopted by the board and in community plans and in bylaws. And by following those policies, we ensure that when we approve a development, it's approved based on reports that provide that have an appropriate level of effort gone in, of the appropriate scope, and that meet professional standards set up by the Engineers and Geoscience governing body, EGBC. If we approve reports that don't meet our own policies and those standards, then we expose our residents or taxpayers to the risk of liability if things go wrong. And that liability risk increases if we are not following our own policies. And that's the heart of the decision that I made to refuse the development permit. For context, since the authority to issue development permits was delegated from the board to the Director of Planning in 2007, somewhere approaching 300 development permits were issued. Not one was refused. And that's a reflection of our commitment and practice of working with applicants and qualified professionals to obtain reports that meet our standards, meet our expectations and our policies. And those policies become fairly complex. And so some guidance from us in review is important. We work hard to provide the right level of guidance, to work with applicants to get there, and we are almost always successful. In last year, we became at a staff level in the planning department, we noted that development permits take some time to approve, and we weren't entirely satisfied with the approval lengths. So we investigated permits that we'd issued over 2021 and 2022. And what we learned is that the average length of time for approvals was 6 months. And that the majority of development permits for geohazards that we approve require one revision to the report. No reports required more than 3 revisions. So in contrast here, we have a file that was active with us for about 22 months, went through 4 rounds of review and comment from us, with each round of review intended to identify the elements of the report that need to be addressed to meet our standard requirements for approval. We weren't successful. We weren't able to bring it to that point. And so after 20 some months, we notified the applicant of our intention to bring it forward to the intention of the planning department to bring it forward to the director, me, for consideration, and that the staff report, the staff recommendation to the director would be to refuse. The applicant was provided an opportunity to not only to speak to me directly, we met twice over Zoom, but to provide additional written submissions and other submissions that might influence the decision and address the gaps that had been identified. The proponent certainly provided additional materials and submissions, but they didn't address the fundamental gaps in the reporting that we had identified. And so for that reason, my decision was to refuse the report. I prepared what I think is a fairly comprehensive and clear reasons for a decision, so that it's clearly understood why I made the decision I made. And that was provided to the applicant, and they were notified that there's an opportunity under our development procedures bylaw to request reconsideration from the board. And as a component of that request for reconsideration, they have another opportunity to provide materials and submissions that might influence the decision of the board or bring the technical report to a level and standard that meets our requirements for approval. Now the decision rests with the board about whether it meets that. Indeed has been the case. But I think you may agree that staff made extraordinary efforts to assist the applicant in meeting our requirements and successfully issuing a development permit. That this process took 3.6 times longer than our average. And we have not in the last 2 years received a development permit application that required 4 rounds of review and comment. That 3 was the most, and only 12% of development permits that we considered over that period required 3 rounds of review. That gives you a little bit of context for sort of normal practice what we typically see from reports prepared by qualified professionals and how we work with QPs and applicants to get to approvals.
Good, thank you, Mr. Daniluz. Just after watching over a number of years, the number of homes in some of our rural communities that have been destroyed by landslide and river revulsion events makes me very supportive of ensuring that proper procedures are followed in these permit applications, both to protect existing homeowners and from protect the future homeowners. So I'd certainly be supportive of the staff's position on this. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
10.1.1 is protective services apparatus replacement. There's a motion for your consideration.
Move Director Castle, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
10.2.1 is Community Resiliency Investment Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports Grant 2025 endorsement request.
Motion. Move Director McMahonic, second Director Castle. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Item 13 is reports by electoral area directors.
Director Davidson would like to kick off.
What can I say? Hazard Task Force continues, as does Hazard Watershed Stewardship Team. Our Hazard Valley Community Association has kicked into the new season that they're earlier this week. Interesting discussions as always. Other than that, not much to report. Thank you.
Director Castle.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. And just before I go into my report, the motion that was brought forward on 5.1, the procedure went kind of quick. I did raise my hand in opposition, so I just like the record to show that I was opposed to that motion. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Castle.
And so now I'll do my report. Is that okay, Chair?
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's been a busy summer on the north side of the river, and the busier that it gets, the greater the likelihood of serious accidents there are along Route 7. And we have seen many serious accidents in Area G this year. I look forward to expressing my frustration and concern for the residents who use the highway for their daily commutes, the agricultural community that relies on the highway for their daily operation of their businesses, in addition to the great number of visitors and those passing through for the purpose of recreation when I meet with staff from the Ministry of Transportation next week. The dynamic of having huge volumes of traffic with motorists who all have different goals for their drive, combined with their level of knowledge and understanding of how traffic flows along Highway 7 corridor, is a perfect storm that leads to too many accidents, most of which are serious and many have been fatal. And it puts our first responders, namely our volunteer firefighters, in the challenging position of responding to dozens of significant accidents. We must advocate to our provincial partners to see improvements to the highway that will address the issues of safety, especially at busy, uncontrolled intersections where we continuously see accidents, in addition to the RCMP and KPCK police to continue increased patrols and enforcement. My condolences to those who have lost loved ones in serious traffic accidents this summer, and to those who have been involved in the accidents that will have long-lasting effects on their lives for years and decades to come. I want to once again give a huge shout out and thank you to the volunteers with the North Fraser Fire Department for their time and expertise in responding to the ever-growing number of calls for service along the highway, all the way from the City of Mission right through to the District of Kent. And I look forward to working with this committee and the board to figure out how we can work together to improve working conditions and benefits to ensure retention, encourage recruitment, and express our appreciation for the work they do in our communities. Residents on Hatzick Island and around Hatzick Lake have been reaching out over the summer, once again, asking for help with regards to the challenges of invasive weeds that are taking over the areas in and around the lake, in particular, the flowering rush. This is an issue that has been challenging the health of the lake and impacting the lives of the residents that live there for many years. Once again, I look forward to working with this committee and the board to find solutions and to advocate on behalf of the residents we represent to find those solutions that will contribute to the overall health and well-being of Hatzic Lake. And finally, I want to give a shout out to a Lake Eric resident, Alicia Trottier, for her years of work and dedication to the Droche Farmers Market. Alicia and her family have spent the past 8 summers ensuring the market happens every Saturday in downtown Droche, in addition to her work behind the scenes all year long to make sure that the market has the resources it needs to flourish and grow. Alicia has made the decision to end her term as chair of the Farmers Market, but has promised we will see her back at the market next year with her fabulous Sasquatch Trails granola available for purchase. And you've all got to try this granola. It's delicious. If there are any residents on the north side of the river who would like to give some of their time to contribute to the future success of the Droche Farmers Market, please look them up online and reach out to find out what they need and how you can help. Once again, thank you, Alicia, for your dedication to our community and for encouraging your family to be there too. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Council, Director McElhaney.
Thank you. So as summer finishes, we also have a lot of accidents out in River Valley. We have it's estimated about 1.5 million visitors out to our area. And I just want to give a thank you and a shout out to our hardworking fire department who are on call and who see some pretty serious things and just keep showing up. And we really appreciate how committed they are and what good care they take in being committed and working for our community. I'm really looking forward to our hazards report being completed for the valley so that we can move on with other plans and sort of gauge where we're at. And I know residents are waiting too for ideas on development and moving forward because we're in a kind of a holding pattern until then. I've been doing about a bi-monthly newsletter and it's being very well received and sharing information and that's pretty good. As most of you know, 6 of our residents have been negatively affected with either losing their homes or having their homes deemed uninhabitable by the atmospheric river event. And after 2.5 years, they were given terribly bad news where they were not going to be helped out financially and shut out by the government and BC government. So that's been really, really tough news. I've met with them. There's a committee in the community that's coming together and we're going to try and do a fundraiser and get some media attention and do what we can to provide some kind of help. So that's happening and a tentative date right now will be November 23rd. And I'm looking forward to joining everyone at UBCM to learn, be a sponge, and to represent the residents that I work for. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director McElhaney. Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's pretty quiet in my area now. Summer's over, and just a big thank you again to the RCMP and Cultons Lake Park Board and FVRD and Modi for their help with the summer traffic. It was really helpful. The RCMP had additional staff this year who patrolled the road and kept it much, much safer. So we'll have a follow-up meeting coming up just to see kind of how the data went for summer. We've got Cultons Lake Aquatic Stewards Society who are doing an amazing job in my area of looking after they're desperately looking after the health of the lake as well as the entire watershed. And so they do deal with invasive species of plants, fish, find the nest, arrange rat nest, messing up the nest for the smallmouth bass who aren't supposed to be there, and apparently are eating all the other fish. So huge shout out to class They are just absolutely instrumental in our area as well, and are hoping to have some extra support and extra volunteers join that group this year. We had the premier was out at the invitation of our MLA Kelly Patton at the end of August, and really just came to check out Maple Bay as well as Entrance Bay, where class reps were there as well as reps from our Lakeside Trail. We had an opportunity to express our concerns about some of the things that are happening at Cultus Lake and in the lake health, and the fact that it needs a whole lot of provincial support that can't just be left to the volunteers, amazing as they are. And so we'll see what happens there. The Lakeside Trail also showed off our trail a little bit, but also expressed the importance of BC Parks taking on the rest of it and finishing the trail, because all the rest is through BC Parks. So we'll see what happens with there. And I guess that's just about it. My other committees are starting up, and looking forward to UBCM as well.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Director Wardenberg.
Yeah, just a short statement. Look forward to joining Mr. Director Castle at the UBCM with the Ministry of Transportation over the number 7 highway or improvements to it. And that's about it for me.
Good. Thank you, Director Wardenberg. Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that I didn't mention this morning in our meeting was that I actually had the pleasure of attending the Fraser Canyon Gateway sign unveiling in Lytton on August 30th. And that was really well done, and it was fun to be there. And then just to reiterate a bit that we weren't plagued with wildfires this summer and no negative impacts from the Chilcotin landslide. And that my request for Northern Health to include patients, the Boston Bar and North Bend patients in their service from Prince George to the Lower Mainland for medical appointments has been agreed upon, and I received an email from Jackie Taggart with a link that patients and their doctors can access.
Good. And thank you, Director Johnson. I have nothing to report from my electoral area, so we'll turn things back to Ms. Kim.
Thank you. So item 14 is public question period for items relevant to the agenda. So we'll just turn things over to our Deputy Corporate Officer, Lauren Olenek.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. So this would be the opportunity for the public to ask a question for an item relevant to the agenda. I'll just look at our one member of the public joining us in person. Do you have a question? No. And then we do have a few members of the public joining us online today. So if you do have a question, I ask that you just hit the raise hand function. And while we give them a minute, I will note we have not received any written correspondence. It appears there's no questions.
Good. Thank you. Which would bring us to adjourn.
It would.
A motion. Move Director Dixon, second Director Wardenberg. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Contrary motion carries. Thank you, staff, and thank you, directors.
Thank you very much.